Hi everybody, in this video we are going to be reviewing how to justify some of our reasoning. So how do you explain your thinking? What we're going to start with is talking about equations. So this problem says two students are both trying to solve this equation. Student number one thinks that the first step should be to add 4 on both sides. So student number one says, let's add 4 on both sides. Student number two thinks that the first step should be to subtract 4 on both sides of the equation. Our job is to figure out which of these students would lead to the correct answer. Well, if I was going to solve this problem, I would start by trying to undo this plus 4, which means my first step would be to subtract 4. Out of these two students, the only student who said that we should subtract 4 would be student number 2. So student number 2 is going to be the student whose solution leads to the correct answer. Now, in order to justify your answer here, what you want to do is explain that you knew you needed to undo the plus 4 and that the way to do that would be to subtract 4. So here's how we would justify our answer. We would say let me back up. I would just say it like this. First, we need to undo the plus 4. So we should subtract 4 because subtraction is the inverse of addition. So what we're going to do is we're going to say 3 things. So your answer should have 3 parts. You're going to say, what should we undo first? So first, what should we undo? How should we do that? So we should subtract. And then why? And because subtraction is the inverse of addition. Now, in the next problem, it says a student solved an inequality and determined that the solution set is x is greater than or equal to 2. She expressed her answer as 2, infinity. Would this be the appropriate interval notation? So this is the question we're trying to answer. Would this be the appropriate interval notation? In order to figure this one out, quite frankly, just like in the other problem, I imagine doing it myself, and what would I do? If I wanted to graph x is greater than or equal to 2 on a number line, I know that I would use a closed circle and I would shade to the right. Now, because there's a closed circle, if I was going to write that in interval notation, I would use a bracket 2, infinity, because infinity would be the number to the right. So if I'm thinking, is this interval notation that's over here appropriate? The answer would be no, because they should have used a bracket since we want to be equal to the number 2. And that's exactly what I'm going to say. I would say this is not the appropriate interval notation because the student should have used a bracket since there is a closed circle on the graph. Actually, let me back that up. Instead of saying since there's a closed circle on the graph, I would say since there is an equal to in the symbol, because we actually didn't start with the graph, we started with the symbol, and we want to go back to what did we start with that told us that there should have been a bracket instead of a parentheses. All right, the next problem says students are asked to graph the inequality x is less than or equal to 4. 2 students' solutions are shown. Which one is correct? Now, in this case, again, I would imagine doing this myself. Because this is a less than or equal to, I know that I would use a closed circle and I would shade to the left. The only graph here that uses a closed circle and shades to the left is the number 2. So I need to explain how I know that student number 2 is correct. So I would say student number 2 is correct because, number 1, they started the graph in the right spot. They started on the number 4. Number 2, they used a closed circle because the symbol has an equal to, right? It's got an underline. And then last, they shaded to the left because the symbol is a less than. So they did 3 things right that made their graph correct. They started in the right spot, they used the right kind of circle, and they shaded the right direction. And that would be my final answer. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will see you soon.